Hello, everyone. Okay, so we'll get started. Um, this is Waypoint Web3. This is a Twitter space co-produced by Sanctor Capital United Gamers. Thank you both for that. To basically create and facilitate a safe space for conversations about all things Web3 gaming related. Um, my name is Ilya. I'm one of the co-founders and partners of Sanctor Capital. So here's some disclosures and mandatory things I have to say. Please bear with me. None of this is financial or legal advice. All of the opinions are my own. There may be companies and/or assets that I mentioned here throughout the conversation where we have had, have, or may have at some point positions or are interested in having positions in. For in the interest of full disclosure, we're backing United Gamers. I think that covers all of it. This will be a recorded space, and so you will be able to kind of come back and re-listen to it after the fact. We typically post recordings within a few days after the initial spaces. So as I mentioned, now that that part's over, this is, Waypoint Web3 was created to have kind of a safe space for all sorts of interesting conversations about all things Web3 gaming. The Today's topic is economics in Web3 gaming, and so that's been both an interesting and controversial topic throughout kind of the rise of gaming in our space. And today we have some really awesome speakers that are going to kind of help shed some light on it. I'm going to introduce each one of you. If you could kind of just introduce, say hi, say a little bit about kind of who you are and what you do, and then we'll get started with our topic. Kiefer, you're up first on my screen, so could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiefer Zhang, and I'm a token economics consultant at Economics Design. So that means I'm doing the design or auditing for the economies of a pretty wide range of Web3 projects, but I especially enjoy working with our gaming clients like Shrapnel on getting to push the boundaries of the space, creating some innovative and sustainable economic models.
Awesome, thank you. Gab, you're up next on my screen.
Cool. Hi guys, I'm Gab. So I'm the community manager for Life Beyond, and I'm also a researcher for different VCs. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. By the way, if I start butchering anybody's name, I apologize in advance, and please correct me, and I'll try to try to get it better next time. Kayesh.
Hey, not bad. Thanks. My name's Kayesh. I'm the CTO for Jetstar. So I'm involved with most of the product design from a technical level as well as actually from a user interaction level.
Awesome. And last but not least, Damiano.
Hey guys, yeah, your pronunciation was perfect. I'm the CMO of Noku, which is a platform about Web3 and play to earn, which is a good point to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. So, uh, you know, I want to start with kind of an easy and general question. Any of the speakers, feel free to jump in. There's kind of no order. We'll have an easy going discussion. Everybody in the audience, if you have questions you want to ask, there will be a point in the talk about 15 minutes until the end of the hour where we will open it up for audience questions. So don't forget your questions, write them down, and you'll be able to ask them to our speakers. But to start, I want to just get going with what is the key difference from an economics perspective between Web3 and Web2? And I mean in-game economies, right? I don't want to, generalize it too much, but what is the big change as, game developers move from a Web2 paradigm to a Web3 paradigm?
May I?
Yep, go ahead. There's no order. You can just jump in as you have an idea.
Okay. Well, actually, I think that Web2 had an economy side as well. Like I played Summoners War for a lot of time. It has like 50, more than 50 million players or downloads, whatever, but it was flooded with players. And there was an economic aspect as well, because many people were buying accounts from others. So they were basically buying their time, because with their time, people improved the account with higher rank heroes, basically, and people were buying that. From Web 2 to Web 3, I think one of the key will be the ownership. So you're not just buying the time. In this case, you can buy one specific asset, and this already makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I can go into another angle here. So when studios are moving to Web3, it really opens up their capabilities of what scale and openness of the economy they can go with. And uh, because they're allowed to build games that have really significant trading and social components when you get into Web3. And these were components that were really desirable with MMOs, but the industry kind of moved away from that with the MMO and subscription model in favor of these closed free-to-play economies. And the key component from an economic perspective there is price discrimination and monetization, where you're able to capture this whale spending that makes up most of the free-to-play economy revenue. But now with Web3 and a kind of transaction-based model, you can capture that whale spending as well as a long tail of minnow spending that you can't in, for example, like a free-to-play or a subscription-based MMO model.
I think just to add to that, in terms of the way economies have been designed in Web 2 games, I think the most popular ones have always had dual currency economics, right, which allow you to control how people are engaging based on the amount of time they have versus how much money they have. With Web 3, it's important, obviously, that we have these economies, but I feel like there's a lot of confusion around the token aspect, and a lot of people focusing on making sure that their token price is a particular value versus the actual enjoyment of the game. So I think from a Web3 perspective, as we build this out, we really need to separate the concept of our token price versus the actual enjoyment of the game.
Okay, I actually want to add up to it. What Kayash said was actually really critical. Like with most games and like token price, those are two completely different things, and I love that. Actually, to really add to that, it's when it comes to Web3 economies, it's really different, right? Almost everything is like heavily token gated. Like you have to purchase an NFT before you actually get to play, or sometimes if it's like free to play, right? What happens is like almost everyone is able to do something, but then for you to get like to that next step, then you find your blockade already. And aside from that, I believe it was Damiano that was talking about uh he was talking about how trading there was necessary, right? And that's exactly right. There were many people that were trading for like the longest time in Web 2. It's quite the same thing here in Web 3, but usually in the economic side, it's really more focused. Really with what Kiefer's saying, it's really more on chasing that fast money, be it with tokens or whatsoever, while people have yet to actually pay for that either the identity of the NFT and what they value, the stats that it holds, and also shifting away from that MMO perspective. But slowly and surely, we're kind of going back there actually.
That's an awesome start. I wanna get right into the controversial stuff around in-game economics. There's been a lot of criticism and kind of suggestions around Axie Infinity. In our earlier conversations, I would ask, how did speakers get into Web3 gaming, and it felt like the vast majority said they got into through Axie Infinity. And so it's been kind of a catalyst, a big kind of mover for our space, but at the same time, there's been a lot of criticism around what they did with their in-game economics and how it led to kind of where they are right now. I'm curious from the perspective of our speakers today, what did they think they do wrong, and is it fixable? And if it is fixable, how would you approach? What would you suggest they do?
Yeah, so there are a lot of components to touch on here. I'll just go with one to start off with, and that'd be an issue of not limiting token inflation at an overall economy level. So they tied the token distribution on a per player basis, or if you look at STEP, like a per NFT basis, and that means that that you're losing control over the inflation rate. You can have this kind of hyperinflation that gets out of control and has negative effects on the economy, and you can't really tie it well to sinks. So it's important to look at the overall economy level when you're managing token inflation rates. I'll pass it off to anyone else. Want to hit
Yeah.
another point?
Yeah, no, sure. Obviously, I agree with what you said, and I think one or maybe two are the most critical points about the Web3 game economics is that the first, I would say 95% of play to earn games right now, I see them as a line. So you start from a point and you go straight to through the inflection, okay? Because they just have one token, they start from zero, they go there, but it's a line. It's like bidimensional. I guess my opinion, I'm happy to be wrong, but I think that we should start to see at this from a three-dimensional perspective, because with one token, one direction, things will never be like sustainable. And I guess I don't know if it's too late for Axie to fix this. I wish them to, but all of the others, which are not as strong as Axie, should change their perspective.
I think, with games like Axie, and forgive me, I haven't actually played Axie, but in terms of the design around the economics, ensuring that there's always an incentive to buy in seem to be their core design, as opposed to actually focusing on, again, I'm going to go back to it, the entertainment value. Because if you focus on the entertainment of the game itself, then you should see natural purchases coming in. And Keeper's point, right, in terms of having those sinks inside, will, as you observe your players engaging with your economy, they should be possible to design. And so I think that's where some of the errors were, where the focus is largely on how do we get more people to keep buying in continuously, as opposed to expending their energies focusing on what people are doing inside the game so that you can build those sinks in.
Connected to that is just planning out like why people would want to buy in is important, rather than just saying like do we want them to purchase, because you want them to be spending for reasons other than just financial incentives. Like a kind of possible rule of thumb loosely is like thinking of if this wasn't a blockchain game, if you just look at the core game loop, are people going to be buying this asset purely because they enjoy the game? Would you be able to monetize through microtransactions? Or if you can't expect someone to buy it without the financial incentive, if you tack on the blockchain component, people are only going to be purchasing for the ability to get a return, and that leads to a zero or a negative sum system.
Yes, exactly this. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, pretty much. So I've been looking at it actually. So I used to play Axie. The truth is, I used to play Axie. I used to be a manager. I used to have like teams of, no, I used to have like about 10 scholars. Yeah. They would all handle like a team themselves. And the thing is, people are gonna put me on the stake for this, but definitely, it it was difficult knowing that I got in at a fairly reasonable price. I got my ROI, but when I could tell like it was getting like let's say completely inflated already, then I could see people still entering. It's hard, sometimes seeing them really as like exit liquidity, unfortunately, right? But That's just kind of like the skin of the game. I mean, this goes again. This is like different. This is just looking at token price itself, and some parts of the. I mean, no, it's not even some parts. It's really the economics of it. It's really hard to look at. I understand that Axie has been like for the longest time. I've done my research on it, right? So even though it's like in alpha stage, like you've seen the difference, like graphics from way before, but graphics are one thing. Same thing with Kiefer was saying. When it comes to the gameplay itself, right? Feels like you're playing rock paper scissors with a little bit more strategy. Is it something that you are actually going to love for like the longest time? Is it something you could continue playing every day and every day and every day, over and over and over again, without a chance of you feeling burnout or getting tired, facing those disconnections, those bugs, and many more? And that's the hard part, right? Whenever money is in there, there's like that need for you. I mean, for almost every investor, right? If you throw your money in, there's like this big need for you to actually get it back, and that's something that I completely understand. With the community sentiment, especially. So another thing, actually, apart from just token price, it's really just the perspective of the community. There's that thing, right? So again, Web 2, you you've seen so many games already, right? You could talk about Valorant, you could talk about Dota 2, you could talk about so many Web 2 games out there, right? And all those Web 2 games, you don't even earn anything from them. In fact, it's like you spend, let's say, $200 for, let's say, these certain skins. What do you get out of them? Fulfillment, enjoyment. Maybe when you kill someone, right? What happens? You get a nice animation, but you bought it and you're happy with it. Definitely, if Axie had a route like that, I think they'd be off in a better spot. But the thing is, we don't have an attachment like that, so I'm I really do hope the best as well for Axie, for Geos and the team. Sky Mavis worked really well, and again, they really are like a big stepping stone for most play to earn and play and earn projects out there.
I feel like in a lot of ways, kind of a lot of what's been said kind of circles around the kind of the idea of sinks, right? Are what are the sinks and how are you able to control them, right? And so I'm curious, in your experience so far, what are kind of useful creative sinks that you see being used by games, and which sinks maybe, I have at least one in mind right now that are potentially kind of masquerading as things, but could actually make things worse.
You mean what would make things worse?
Like if it's a sync that which things are good basically, and which things maybe
Okay.
are not
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
good.
Got your question. Yeah, one thing that could be things worse right now is focusing too much on entertainment. I mean, I think that's the entertainment will be one of the keys to get to the mass adoption. But right now, play to earn games are not um, they do not have an audience who really care about entertainment. We can check Tedan Arena. Tedan Arena was a complete failure. I'm sorry for them. And it happened because the game was maybe funny for someone, maybe not, but people were not there to have fun because there is Brawl Stars if you want to have fun. Tedan Arena was similar, but the audience was completely different. So focusing too much on entertainment would mean would lead to a failure, which is instead something that I don't want to. And something good on the other side would be focusing on the concept of play and own, because owning will make more people join because people don't trust the profit. I told to so many people who my real life friends, they are still in Web 2, all of them. And when I say they can make profit out of a game, they barely believe me, and we know each other from 20 years.
Yeah, and so going back to your question, an area, a sink that's been used that is in the end more harm than that does more harm than good is a focus on creating additional NFTs, especially NFTs with more earning opportunity, because it's kind of it's going towards hyperinflationary issues, and also goes towards a long-term outcome of a lot of people entering the economy and each individual person not earning that much. So you have with Axie, the sync being just continuing to breed more and more Axies, to the point where you're devaluing Axies, you're giving a lot of people earning potential. And I think the space should move towards having hard limits on the current total supply of NFTs that can be scaled up over time. For example, Heroes of Mavia is going in this direction, and it allows you to have, if you're limiting the earning opportunity at any particular point in time, you can have positive and sizable returns for the participants, as it's not just scaling up to the point where the individual return per user is tiny. So I think that's a direction that should be moved towards.
I
I think
totally agree. Sorry, guys. I just wanted to add that I totally agree, and that's what I was meaning by play to own, which will lead to play to earn.
Yeah, and I mean, I think some of the syncs which maybe don't get used in Web3 today is actual destruction of assets, right? This happens all the time in Web2. So, and I think it'll feed kind of into the whole loop that Keith was talking about in terms of maintaining caps on what exists, where if you've got assets, they should be able to die, right? So, they should be burnt and removed from the ecosystem. You should be able to pay to repair them, or reset stats, right? These are all techniques that are already used in Web2. So, kind of bringing that back in to a Web3 design, yeah, fine, we have to write stuff into the chain, but that's what we signed up for, right? So there's a cost to it, but then this is where people are willing to pay as well. So, just in terms of being able to reset if you do breed something and you want to be able to regen it, people will pay for it. You can put limits on time. But I think these are some of the techniques which we need to be able to use, because we're borrowing from the knowledge of what we know works inside Web2.
I guess like on that topic, I somewhat agree with you, Kayesh. There's this one burning mechanism that people call, let's say, upgrading, right? Upgrading, let's say, of skills or upgrade of equipment and a lot more. I've seen this in previous projects before. What they do is, if you burn a certain amount, let's say NFTs, you get, an X amount of, let's say, increase in the profit that you get on a daily basis, right? So that one, I mean, mechanisms like that make you generate profits over profits without you even having to, it's like the trade-off isn't really like breeding or, that multiplier of NFTs. It's now multiplied by the quality. I think it's something like that now that has to be managed as well. Both really like for both the investor and like the project leader itself. It's difficult. I've seen so many people like when they try to emphasize on, let's say, upgrading, many people believe that it's important for them to focus more on breeding, right? Because it's quantity over quality, while the other side they focus on quality versus quantity. But in the other way, if the project or the economics isn't able to handle or you know really take in consideration both audiences, then you have like a big recipe for disaster.
I mean, I think the the focus should always be on the audience, which is there for the game as opposed to for the earning. Because I don't think the design or you'll conflict with the creation of your product if you're trying to focus on these two things. They are very, very different groups of people.
I want to follow up on something that was mentioned, the sink of kind of asset destruction. And so, how does it, or does it conflict with the concept of play to own? I remember seeing kind of the first teams that were experimenting with asset destruction, and they were, very hesitant and very worried about kind of people feeling kind of a strong negative emotion over their assets being destroyed, right? And we know kind of these negative triggers can kind of create friction and barriers and kind of push players away. how do you see kind of play to own or kind of some form of kind of asset ownership coinciding with the sink of asset destruction? Because personally, I think that asset repairs works really interestingly as a sink, but asset destruction is a really curious one that I haven't really kind of fully formed maybe my view on. How do you coincide that with the ethos of play to own?
So my opinion on this is that if you're going to any game that you're going to play, so if it's Diablo, for example, and you have a weapon, the more you use that weapon, the more it especially if you go back to Diablo 2, the more you use it, the more wear it gets, and therefore it can be destroyed unless you repair it. So you can still, I mean, you can own the NFT if you want, but then it should set to zero all the values that it has, because this particular item, if you didn't take care of it as part of your gaming journey, uh, you should lose it, right? Because otherwise, you're as Kiefer described, you just enter this inflationary economy where just more and more assets get created, and there's no end to it.
I totally agree because I guess that people should be a little bit more educated about how Web3 works because it's normal that there is a burning system and assets being destroyed. It's part of the burning system. Repairing an asset, again, is part of the burning system. If there is one, then the game it's more likely to survive. If there isn't, the game will die, and you wasted your money on the asset that you bought. So I guess that it's about communication, explaining why that asset could be destroyed. Then, yeah, can be a little bit frustrating if someone else destroyed it. That should be on another side of the speech. But if you use it over and over and it destroys because you didn't repair it, I guess it should be intended as normal.
Interesting. I want to kind of follow on through this to the question of control, right? In Web 2 paradigm, we're kind of used to the fact that developer, publisher, they have a lot of control over kind of the key economic levers in the game, and they can kind of inflate or deflate as they see fit, as they kind of see balance and kind of the targets they're seeking towards. How do you see economics control from the perspective of Web3 developers? What is it that they should be putting into their designs in terms of levers? And is control of a Web3 economy even possible?
Sorry, Ilya, just a really quick one as a point of order. I think Kiefer disconnected and reconnected and has lost his speaker tag.
Yep. He's there. He's coming back in.
I think I can take that. So, I suppose, Web3 developers can they control the economy same way. Uh, I mean, I understand how developers and publishers, work, and for me, I believe that they have to, at least, especially in the building stage, or let's say, in the getting to know you stage of like the game, the investors, because until we build out that solid trust when it comes to communities, when it comes to say the project lifeline itself, until it gets to the point where the project can stand for itself. Many guilds have gotten into the game. Many people are now putting in their votes. Almost like a DAO, the classic of voting system. What's gonna happen? It's gonna be somewhat like a democracy where people are gonna be voting. Okay, no, I think it has to go this way. No, it has to be here. No, we're gonna go to crash, and people are gonna go over discourse until we get to that point. Then definitely, I believe that the dev should find a way to control it, especially when it comes to maintaining the ecosystem, the taxes, everything necessary to keep, be it token price or even just certain events in game afloat. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think a
Yeah,
lot of
look,
the tools. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it, Kiefer, go for it.
Okay, so a lot of the tools I believe are the same for Web 2 versus Web 3 economy control, but the stakes are a good amount higher. And I'd say that these, either the teams or the DAO, whoever has the power in the situation, has to act a lot like a central bank. And in doing so, they can also pull from central bank playbooks in some cases for their design. Like often, will suggest that these teams use forward guidance in just setting expectations with their community about future economic changes that will be made in order to form expectations, because the expectations around inflation or any future economic adjustments will in themselves have an impact on the economy.
I think also one of the things that we need to take a step back and look at is how many people are we looking to engage with this, right? Games are intended to, if we're ever going to reach from a Web3 perspective the same sort of scale that Web2 is, you're talking about millions of people playing a game. So getting 1 million people to vote on something from a game economic standpoint, I don't think it's really a tenable proposition. So from that perspective, you will need an economics master within the actual game design. And on top of that, again, the purpose and the vision behind what you're building, what are we trying to solve for, right? In terms of the consumer's desire. Consumers like playing games, and as was described earlier, the animations and all the other stuff inside it that gives them that satisfaction and that reward. That's what they're in it for. And those are the people that we want to cater to, because that's obviously the largest portion of the gaming economy. Around that, you've got the people that are saying, okay, I'm putting all this time in, and now that I'm done with this game, I want to be able to sell off my assets so I can buy new ones and so on. And so we're supporting that sort of trading functionality with Web3. Right? That's what the mass market appeal segment is, as I understand it today. So I think trying to go down a different bend and making sure that everybody can own everything and they understand what that means, that's not where Web 2 is today, and nobody's asked for that, right? So people are asking for ways to be able to upgrade their engagement with the game or transfer over to a different game without losing their investment. But aside from that, I don't think that there's another problem that exists that we're trying to solve. I'm open to hear any other perspectives on this.
I'm actually quite curious to follow up on that. So back from I used to play a fair bit of MMORPG, right? And so even back in the days of like I don't know, like when RuneScape was starting out, right? There was a lot of kind of unofficial markets for let's say gold and other assets that were forming around the game because people wanted to do something faster or get to a higher level to get a more rare item, right? So that desire, that demand existed kind of prior, you would say, to kind of Web3 forming. So are we not also catering for that type of user as well?
Oh, look, 100%. But I think when you try to analyze what's behind that, those are people that are willing to exchange money for time, right? So that's pay for upgrade. And in terms of what are they doing next? Are they going off and trying to resell what they've purchased there? I don't know the stats on that. I do know the marketplaces you're talking about where people have said, look, I built this character and now I'm done with the game. So does somebody want to come in and buy it off me? Right. And that's like trading baseball cards, right? Like, I've got all this, I've made a good pack and now I want to sell it off or I want to swap it up for a different set. So I think, trying to understand what the mass consumer appeal is, I think that's really important. And I feel like a lot of what we see in Web3 is, oh, well, I'm in it for Web3 because I want that token and I want the token to go up. And, the focus is really on blockchain as opposed to the consumer. Right, so that's what I'm arguing for, right? Saying in terms of the way we design the economy and the way we try to engage the users, we need to be thinking on the millions of user scale. So we can't have these people voting for how should we change the economy because they won't necessarily know what's in the broader interest of the macroeconomic design of the game.
I totally agree. It's a very, very risky to put the decisions, all of them, in the hands of people who don't know the bigger picture and would probably also care more about their single interests over the main one.
Those are actually pretty fair. Actually, the way I think about it, based on what Kayash was saying, correct. They have to completely understand the community sentiment. Like, for example, right, if you think that people are just gonna be in it for the money, right, then it's gonna be hard because now it has to be you managing the expectations of the people. You understand the community loves characters that look great, right? So instead of you putting the idea into just profits itself, right, you get them to actually fall in love with the characters, build up the story from there. And now you limit a supply, for example, right? Only about 200 people can get these characters. But you know what? That character looks so nice. It has nice skills. And obviously, I would do anything to actually, create competition for it to actually get my hands on that character. There are some people that are actually like that, be it 200, one out of one. Many people are out there trying to collect things like those. Why? Because they find value in it. And you're right. It is actually scary too. Lumiano, like it's very scary to really to really put the faith. It's like the investors are at the mercy of these publishers or developers, right? It's because at first, who else is gonna be there to actually manage it, right? It's it's really hard to just give it out to the community all throughout from the very beginning, right? Like you listen to what the community says. What if the community is skewed, with again self-centered profits as well, right? Then that means you're completely damaging yourself and the project with it. And that's difficult, right? Because we have to contribute back to Web3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
looking at kind of you have to be aware of the split in different types of player personas. Like we mentioned, there'd be the investors, the kind of core gamers who have their own like social versus killer archetypes, and then also like the value extractor as a fairly negative persona, and understanding that they have their different motivations. They also might have different levels of control in a DAO. And so got to be aware when setting up the governance structures of, are the people that you're giving power to actually, do they actually have the, especially long-term versus short-term, long-term interests in mind, of the project in mind. So yeah, very important to think about how you're delegating power.
Yeah, because you have to keep in mind that most of people, on my experience, it's very sad to say, but most of the people were just looking about their single profit. So giving too much power, it's very risky on this stage because, as I said before, people should be a little bit more educated about what is really is a DAO and how it should influence the game economy, because otherwise the game is on the edge.
I'm curious, how do you see kind of game governance evolving, right? Because we can take some lessons from the DeFi sector, but we've just recently watched kind of the drama. I don't know how many people here have watched the drama around MakerDAO and kind of how their voting kind of evolved and escalated. But there's kind of a fair bit of kind of community tensions there. With game economies, while they're small, kind of what happens may not influence the economies that much. But we saw with, say, Axie Infinity, how there were tools now being built to kind of help facilitate kind of payment of kind of utilities and things like that, right? Like the game economy started to kind of integrate with in real life economy. So when if we expect these worlds to grow to be really big and have millions of players and have millions billions of assets and value moving to and fro, how do we imagine governance of that from an economics perspective taking shape?
Limited to choices. That's what I see. Like there should be, in any case, an upper level of economy management, which keeps some options, and then the community through the governance token or whatever else will choose between the options, because otherwise giving too much freedom and giving too much power on the economy itself will probably destroy the token and the whole economy. So an upper level, giving 2-3 options on one stage, maybe once a month, giving the right to take decision, that should be, in my opinion, again, I'm happy to be wrong, but this should be the way.
I think we're going to see companies maintaining control for a pretty long period of time while their game gets more established and the economy gets worked out. But once they do start to move towards decentralization, I feel like it's going to be more of a representative democracy model rather than direct. You have a lot of voter apathy issues with kind of more open democratic governance model, and just moving towards people who are dedicated and have significant knowledge around the economy, the gameplay, game design in general. So having an educated council of users being the ones that are directly making these decisions.
No, completely correct there, Kiefer, actually. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with Life Beyond right now. Um really, right? You're absolutely correct that democracy and everything. Currently, the team has been creating the game for about 2 years. So, and we've launched open alpha just recently, right? And that's the thing. I don't think many people realize it, but creating a game that's essentially fun. I mean, not just cookie cutters, not just click and earn and things like those. No, I mean like a real MMORPG type of game with like big decisions. Anything involving society and a lot more. Definitely, we're going through that route. So currently, right? Just imagine if Animoca Brands, let's say they're always in charge of Life Beyond currently, around how long or how soon would it take before they can actually, let's say, throw out and throw it out to the community for them to actually go out to that governing system. It's gonna take lots of tweaks, lots of testings with the communities itself. Since again, um, I haven't even seen a complete game that has exactly explored that out yet, right? Because we've basically entered like year one from year zero of play and earns or play to earns from like the launch of Axie Infinity, or even just Crypto Kitties. To be honest, like just massive volume came in during Axie Infinity. So definitely the way I see it, yeah, they will really have to be in control and in charge first, especially until they get the game up and running, and until the community sentiment feels that this is a game that will stick around for quite a long time, when all the features, be it burning mechanisms, all the sinks and faucets are actually there in place and everything makes sense.
Want to open this up for the audience as well. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll call you up to the stage and you'll be able to ask a question. In the meantime, I want to throw a little bit of more fuel on the fire. There's been a lot of debate for one token model versus two token model design. I've even seen three token models at this point. Do you have a belief as to kind of which approach is correct, or maybe different game genres have kind of different tokens that benefit them? How do you view this debate on kind of multi-token design?
I think variety is the key. As I said, linear approach would 99% bring the project to die. Two is better than one, but yeah, maybe it's not even enough, because one is very very easy to manipulate and to bring to the inflection. With two, you can adjust it. For example, I don't know if any of you guys ever heard of Farmer's World, one of the biggest game on Vox blockchain. It, it started with three, which were strictly connected, like you needed one to make the other and so on, like a circle economy, and it rocked. for a very long time, longer than many other games, because it had three and connected by themselves. One for me is not gonna go too far.
So
No, no. Sorry, go ahead, Kiefer. Go.
okay. So I think that this really depends a lot. I'm a strong believer in designing from first principles. You really want to look at the project's fundamental goals, their target player personas, and designing around that. So just kind of taking a model that works for someone and slapping it on your game um, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for your game. You want to understand why this is working and why it applies to the goals that you have for your project. But if I had to pick, I'd probably lean a little bit more actually towards a one token model, but also remembering that you don't have to be like all in on chain items. So you don't have to have all your currencies be tokens. You can have a mix of having one token and then having a hard currency instead of a off-chain hard currency instead of a utility token. Also, because depending on who you're targeting, if you have a lot of trades happening and you're using a token for that, that can incur a lot of taxable events, which might be a put off for some retail gamers.
We have a question from the audience, so I want to continue the discussion, but I do want to give a chance for the audience to ask some questions. Josh, I'm going to call you up. If you could please introduce yourself and then ask a question.
Hey everyone, great chat. Thanks to that, Josh here. Um, Actually, if you want to continue the chat, my question was gonna sort of divert the conversation a bit because one thing I'm surprised that we didn't sort of start off with was does play to earn and play to own actually still make sense right now? So we talk about tokenomics models, etc., and all that, but uh, is there actually any really viable tokenomic model where a gamer plays to actually earn, but looking at the bearish market, or if we don't have people investing in the token itself, that opportunity to earn actually totally disappears. Whereas a building projects where players get to play and earn, and these earns could be in like really the minimal kind of income. We're talking about cents to a dollar, etc., and all that, where they actually play to experience, but they also sort of make up the money that they invest to buying skins or weapons or etc., and all that through the time and effort that they put through into the game. Does anybody agree or disagree that there's still sort of a space to play to earn and play to own itself the way we saw it previously? That's it. Thanks.
Who wants to tackle that?
I can take it if you guys want. For example, something already happened. If I understood your question correctly, So Rare, which is not known by many people, but it's probably one of the best projects out there. So Rare is about fantasy football. You actually own, but own is not enough to earn, but it's working. They got Mbappe as testimonial, which is crazy. It's sick to have these kind of guys which are on the top level to have as your testimonial, because you're not just paying him. Of course, I think they did, but they earned a lot because that's a play to own, and once you own, you have to earn, but it's not strictly connected. So I would say that again, it's so rare if you want to have a look at them. I shouldn't make advertisement for other projects, but they're very good, and for what I saw, it works because they have a precise economy model which is working.
I actually love that. Yeah. Same with what Demiano was saying. Like, to be honest, like I can rename quite a few projects, right? Not just honestly in Ethereum, not just on Animoca brands. Like, to be honest, like you have Ember Sword, of course, there's Illuvium. There's again one I have with Life Beyond. There are many more. Even in Solana, you already have like the case of Plato with Roguestar. Okay, you have many different types of games that are popping out, and it's because they know that play to earn isn't really isn't really that feasible right now, right? People are trying to avoid the concept of the old pumps and dumps. They're all trying to figure out now and put more value into the NFTs that most people want to have, right? It's all somewhat going back into fulfillment, especially what people find great. So again, that's why you see these long-standing communities, people that believe in games. Like for example, in Star Atlas, you have these guilds that despite the game not being out yet, they're still very much alive and kicking. You have the same thing with Ember Sword. You have the same thing with other people that hold their packs, not just because they have bags in there, but it's because they're really looking forward for like the very release of the game and what else are like the sneak peeks that they could have. And many of them see it as like an early investment for like many of them really try to invest early to see how much benefits they can get later on in the future, especially when the game comes in full release, right? Again, when all the sinks and all the burning mechanisms are in place, or let's say when the entire ecosystem makes sense, then what comes next, right? That's how most people see it in play to own. And yes, you're right, it is currently a bearish market. Many people aren't really into it. Many people are into, quick flips, hence, the free mint ecosystem right now. But it is what it is. That's currently the Web3 space. But again, with the entire dynamics happening right now in Web3 games, I would say it's shifting heavily towards more play to own. It's really owning the NFTs that you have and, setting your identity itself, be it in game as, your character, a gamer, a crypto investor. It's going to be up to you. You make your own story.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question. Crypto Joe, I'm going to call you up to the stage. Please introduce yourself, and then you can ask your question. Moment of technical difficulty, I think. Give him another second. Okay, while Crypto Joe is trying to load, I'm not sure what the connection issue is. Typically, I like to end the spaces with kind of going around and asking speakers what they're looking forward to uh, from their perspective in the next 6 to 12 months. So I'd like to go around and ask everybody who had the chance to share their thoughts today. What are you looking forward to in terms of evolving economic design from games in Web3 space? Kiefer, you can start.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in seeing how people can creatively come up with new solutions that are tackling some of these issues, or also things that might be testing out some traditional economic theory that wasn't really possible to test in the real world, but you can in Web3. For example, looking at taxation systems for land value taxes that are maybe a little too hard to test out in the real world, but you can use it to try to fight speculation Web3 games. So excited to see some experimentation in that area.
That's really cool. Gub?
For me, I'm just looking forward to all like honestly all the MMORPG games out there that'll be releasing, especially all the other developers out there trying to bring in be it mobile gaming, PC gaming, console gaming, and introducing Web3 technologies. Honestly, again, gaming takes time. Some games take 3 years, others take longer, 5 years or more. But it's only gonna be a matter of time. Until then, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayesh.
I think actually the bearish market, in a way, is a really interesting position for all Web3 games, because the focus has to be more on how are we going to get consumers engaged, how are we going to get them involved in our games, how do we make this the whole distinction that I'm a Web3 game, you must connect your wallet. go away, because I feel like a lot of projects now realize that you have to, if you're a game, you have to be looking at a much larger volume of people to get involved. So that movement away from just a focus on token value and into actual gaming value, this is what I'm looking forward to as a result of the market we're in. Because I think that's going to lead to a set of much higher quality games being produced, which will then be using the token or the blockchain design behind it for much more meaningful purposes than just creating NFTs for the sake of making NFTs.
Awesome. And last but not least, Damiano.
Well, on my side, what I think I'm looking for the most is interoperability, which is something that actually at Noku we are trying to do, because I really like last answer from Kayesh. The um, the bigger model, the bigger audience will come from many things. Also, a bigger industry, nice games, and so on. But interoperability would really help. And as I said, we are trying to get there, because an asset will be worth so much more if I can use it there and there.
Awesome. Well, this takes us to the top of the hour. Thank you so much, all of the speakers. Thank you, everybody in the audience who tuned in, and thank you for your questions and for kind of again making the space grow. Um, as I mentioned, we will be posting the recording in a few days, so you will have a chance to revisit the conversation. But once again, thank you all of the speakers for sharing your thoughts, and come back next week when we will be discussing how the guild model is evolving in the Web3 space.